Welcome to Novel Love Hearing. Get ready for heart-pounding action, thrilling adventures with fresh and unique elements, a touch of romance, and a dash of harem. Everything you're craving is right here. We're excited to have you join us on this journey. So come along to Novel Love Hearing, we're waiting for you. As a small favor, please consider sharing Novel Love Hearing with your friends, family, in YouTube comments, on Discord, Reddit, or anywhere else you hang out online. Happy listening, and enjoy the ride. Chapter 128, Run, Stellar. The stellar train sat quietly on a plaza suspended high in the air. It was a waiting period, with 7 minutes left before the fourth level began. The first 3 levels had been relatively easy. The rewards were modest as well. Starting from the fourth level, the difficulty would rise to A rank, and the rewards would naturally increase accordingly. Sitting inside the train compartment, Chen Meng scanned his surroundings. He couldn't figure out how the plaza was suspended in midair. There were no visible jet propulsion systems, no signs of strong magnetic fields, and certainly no steel cables. After retracting his gaze, he turned his attention to the 2 accessory blueprints on the control panel. Both had been obtained in the previous levels. They weren't of particularly high quality. One was white tier, and the other green tier. But their rarity lay in the fact that these blueprints could only be obtained through fortuitous encounters within the Tower of Heaven. They were randomly acquired, not guaranteed rewards for completing the second and third levels. But now wasn't the time to inspect his gains. He sat in his seat, lit a cigarette, and gazed out the window at the scenery. The towering skyscrapers built from mechanical parts looked cold and uninviting. Ahead lay the 4th and 5th levels. Their difficulties were rated A and S, respectively. If he could clear these 2 levels, he would have successfully completed the Tower of Heaven fortuitous encounter map. So far, he didn't feel that the map posed any significant challenge. Soon, a light screen appeared in front of the train. Level 4, A rank difficulty, City's Peril. Escape the mechanical city. The moment the light screen appeared, Chen Meng felt as though all the searchlights from the mechanical city's skyscrapers were trained on him. The scenery around him began to shift, and his ears were filled with a cacophony of noises. Intermittent electronic sounds. The roar of gunfire. The screeches of monsters. The previously silent targeting radar suddenly blared to life, its screen densely covered with countless red dots. Calling stellar train, calling stellar train. Retreat. Retreat. You are ordered to retreat. A cold, emotionless mechanical voice came through the train radio. Chen Meng's expression changed as he turned to look out the window. Just moments ago, he had been on the plaza high in the air, but now the train had somehow appeared in a plaza within the city. On either side of the train, hundreds of humanoid biomimicry robots, their eyes glowing red, charged toward the city's outskirts with weapons in hand. He could clearly see the exposed wires and energy stones on their bodies. The guns they carried were entirely different from those produced by his train. Sleek and slender, with what looked like batteries attached to the stocks. Zzz. Amidst the chaos, thousands of 2-meter-tall, mantis-like monsters surged from the end of the street. The robots charging forward immediately dropped to one knee, aimed their guns at the monsters, and pulled the triggers. Crimson lasers shot out, and any monster hit by them burst into smoke and collapsed at the feet of others. But more monsters, untouched by the lasers, closed in on the robots. They opened their grotesque mouths and roared, raising their sharp, bladed limbs to slash at the robots. Sparks and electricity flew as the struck robots twisted unnaturally before collapsing in a cloud of black smoke. The street behind the plaza was just a microcosm. The entire mechanical city had came to life, filled with the roars of monsters. Looking up, Chen Meng saw countless flying monsters flapping their wings like a dark cloud descending upon the city. Anti-aircraft guns mounted on the skyscrapers opened fire almost simultaneously. Whoosh! Whoosh! In an instant, the sky above the mechanical city was crisscrossed with the trails of tracer rounds, resembling a grand and unparalleled meteor shower. Stunningly beautiful. Countless flying monsters, struck by the gunfire, shrieked and plummeted to the ground, but even more broke through the defensive line. Chen Meng's eyes flashed with disbelief and awe. He even spotted 4 or 5 trains rising from the city, charging forward. The firepower accessories mounted on the trains were unleashing a furious barrage. On the targeting radar, more trains emerged from skyscrapers, from underground, or from lift platforms beneath the plaza. They accelerated along the streets, rushing toward the city's outskirts to engage the enemy. Was this an illusion? Or was it something akin to a combat training virtual space? The mechanical city before him was nothing like the one he had seen when he first entered the map. The air was filled with piercing alarms, not a single human in sight, and the ground was covered with running robots and what seemed like an endless horde of monsters. The deafening roar of countless weapons firing and the shrieks of monsters merged into a tsunami of sound, leaving his mind momentarily blank. The mechanical city now appeared far less abandoned than when he had first entered. It seemed much more intact, devoid of the desolation he had initially felt. It was alive with activity. At that moment, boom! A skyscraper beside the street suddenly retracted its walls from the 7th floor down to the 1st, revealing a massive, 10-meter-tall mech. The mech was equipped with an array of heavy firepower accessories, wielding a glowing sword, its body flashing with various indicator lights. As soon as it stepped out of the skyscraper, 2 deep blue flames erupted from its back, propelling it into the air. It soared toward a monster dozens of meters tall. That mech. Chen Meng stared at the ascending mech. He recognized it. Though its appearance had changed, it was the same mech that had chased him in the first level. The stellar armor. He remembered it clearly. At the time, he had wondered why the mech shared the same name as his train. Had he chosen such a common name? But back then, it had been a crippled version, lacking the heavy firepower it now carried. It had only wielded a great sword, which, unlike the current one, didn't glow. Just then. Roar. An ear-splitting roar erupted beside him. A massive, grotesque worm, covered in sticky, disgusting mucus, burst from the ground at the end of the street. Its hundreds of sharp fangs instantly devoured all the robots and mantis-like monsters on the street. It then charged toward the stellar train at terrifying speed. The street cracked and split apart. Chen Ming instantly pushed the control stick almost to its limit, activated the wind-fire wheels, and triggered their level 5 supermodel effect, along with the nitrogen tail jet's supermodel effect. The level 5 supermodel effect of the wind-fire wheels allowed the train to enter a potential unlocking state, doubling its maximum speed. However, it rapidly consumed energy stones and caused some damage to the wheels. The nitrogen tail jets on both sides of the train merged into 2 massive thrusters, providing immense propulsion. This was his ultimate speed-related trump card. The control panel showed that the train's speed had reached 980 km per hour. In the blink of an eye, the train shot out of the plaza, speeding down the road ahead. The scenery on either side blurred as the train accelerated to an almost incomprehensible speed. The train auxiliary eye had taken over full control of the train. The targeting radar indicated that the monster was of an unknown level, far beyond what the stellar train could handle. He finally understood why the roads in the mechanical city were so straight and wide. They were designed for trains to traverse at high speeds. Yet, even with the train's incredible speed, the energy stones were depleting rapidly. Mechanical nanite spiders swarmed out, frantically repairing the wind-fire wheels. But within just 3 seconds, the massive worm that had emerged from the ground closed in on the stellar train's tail. It had no eyes. Only a mouth. A mouth that took up its entire head, filled with countless fangs and a wrinkled, birth canal-like throat. The worm's body was so thick it could swallow 3 trains whole. Damn it. Chen Meng's expression darkened. Was this really a rank difficulty? The stellar train stood no chance against an unknown level monster. Unknown level. What the hell did that even mean? His proud level 6 armor was utterly insignificant in the face of such a creature. At this point, there was no way to escape. He had no choice but to gamble. Just as he was about to bring the stellar train to a sudden halt, allowing the worm to swallow it, and then attempt to use the train stunt death spin from within the worm's belly to break free. Boom. The ground suddenly shook violently. The mech that had been flying in the air moments ago now landed heavily on the ground. Its mechanical foot stomped down on the massive worm, pinning it in place. The mech then turned its head toward the now stopped stellar train, its eyes flashing red. A cold, emotionless mechanical voice came from the speaker installed in its throat. Run, Stellar. Survive. In the next moment, 3 even larger worms burst from the ground, their gaping maws lunging at the mech. Chen Meng narrowed his eyes, not daring to linger. He pushed the control stick again, sending the train racing deeper into the mechanical city. A red line on the screen guided his path. This was the level's task guidance. As he left, he saw the worm spewing black, sticky liquid onto the mech. The mech's surface armor was rapidly corroding, the damage resembling the corrosion marks he had seen on the mech in the first level. In just 30 seconds, he had traveled less than a 20th of the distance indicated by the red line on the screen. Several more massive worms emerged from the ground, blocking his path. Just as he was about to use the spider legs to leap over them, armies of robots poured out from the skyscrapers on either side. Their internal wires were exposed, and their armor was missing pieces here and there, clearly battle-scarred. Hundreds of robots, armed with various weapons, charged forward like soldiers on a suicide mission. But against the massive worms, they were insignificant, quickly devoured. Then, boom, boom, boom. A series of faint explosions erupted within the worms' bellies. The worms howled in pain, writhing on the ground and abandoning their attack on the train. Chen Meng glanced at the 2 skyscrapers with open walls. Inside were countless assembly lines. The assembly lines were filled with broken robots. Several robots stood beside the lines, using mechanical arms to dismantle, reassemble, and repair the damaged units. He frowned slightly, then pushed the control stick again. The train's spider legs bent slightly before springing into the air, leaping over the writhing worms. The train continued speeding down the straight road ahead. As he left, he saw one of the robots about to be devoured turn its head back. Its eyes flashed red, and a hoarse, grating voice, like that of a terminal oral cancer patient, rang out. "Survive, Stellar." In the next moment, a brilliant explosion erupted from the robot's abdomen, instantly engulfing its entire body. Countless parts scattered into the air before gently falling to the ground. He felt like a mere spectator, watching a cutscene unfold. Every danger he encountered was beyond his ability to handle. The unknown level monsters, once they got close to the stellar train, meant certain doom. Every danger he faced was met by someone stepping in to shield him, ensuring his survival. Finally, Chen Meng steered the stellar train to the finish line, the highest point of the mechanical city. But even here, the air was filled with the roar of gunfire. The flames of war had reached this place too. Turning to look back at the mechanical city, he saw countless plumes of black smoke rising into the sky. Fires raged in every corner of the city. A sea of monsters, like a dark cloud, enveloped the entire city. Countless skyscrapers had collapsed, and the once deafening roar of gunfire had noticeably diminished. At the finish line, stood a massive elevator, like an observation deck. Its sides were made of glass, with only the floor and ceiling constructed of steel plates. The steel frame of the elevator extended into the sky, its end disappearing into the clouds, as if it led straight into the cosmos. The elevator doors were wide open, waiting for him to enter. On either side of the doors, stood hundreds of robots, missing limbs, their internal wires even dragging on the ground. They held weapons in their hands. All the robots he had seen along the way were black, but among this crowd, one stood out. Its body was crimson red. This robot stepped forward. Its eyes flashed red. It bowed slightly toward the stellar train. A mechanical eye fell to the ground as it bent over. It remained in that position for 3 seconds before straightening up. Raising its right hand, a hoarse, grating mechanical voice came from the speaker in its throat. "Survive, Stellar. You must. You must. You must let them know. This hatred will never die. Not even in a billion years." Chapter 129, Ahead is a restricted area, the Tower of Heaven. In the next moment. Roar. Countless monsters surged out from the mechanical city below, their howls echoing. The once deafening sounds of gunfire and artillery from above the city had faded away, leaving only sporadic shots ringing out. The hundreds of robots standing here seemed to be the last soldiers of this mechanical city. "Charge." A cold, emotionless mechanical voice came from one of the robots. Despite the suicidal nature of the charge, there was no hint of passion or fear in its tone. It was as if they were simply executing a command. Immediately after, hundreds of battered robots, armed with weapons, launched their final charge against the thousands of monsters that vastly outnumbered them. Chen Ming silently piloted the train into the massive elevator surrounded by glass panels on both sides. As the elevator doors closed, he saw countless parts flying through the air, and the robots were no longer visible. In the next moment, the elevator began to ascend rapidly, its speed increasing steadily. The mechanical city below, shrouded in thick black smoke, quickly shrank in size. Countless howling monsters climbed up the steel framework beneath the elevator. Boom, boom, boom. Explosions erupted one after another. The steel framework beneath the elevator began to blow up, cutting off the monster's path of ascent. The elevator's speed continued to accelerate. The elevator was large enough to accommodate a train with up to 30 carriages. Yet, it was also small enough to hold only one train. The mechanical city below had completely fallen to the monsters. Only one train had escaped. The stellar train, the sole survivor and the last hope of everyone in the mechanical city. This elevator. It was the only escape route during the city's final moments of destruction. As the speed increased, the elevator pierced through the clouds, and the mechanical city disappeared from view. The scenery outside the elevator quickly blurred, and black flickers of light appeared, as if traversing a wormhole. Screech. A sharp sound suddenly rang in his ears. Everything around him fell silent. The stellar train reappeared on the floating plaza high in the sky, as if it had never moved. A new light screen appeared in front of the train. Level 4, successfully cleared. Reward, a random yellow-grade accessory blueprint. Randomizing. Randomized to the yellow-grade vehicle component blueprint Super Energy Tailjet. The 5th level will begin in 30 minutes. P.S. All accessory blueprints obtained in this fortuitous encounter map can only be acquired within the Tower of Heaven fortuitous encounter map. Phew. Chen Meng, sitting in the control room, let out a long sigh. He felt a sticky sensation on his back. After lowering the window, he lit a cigarette and looked at the data displayed on the control panel. Energy stone consumption, unchanged. Copper ore consumption, unchanged. In other words, everything that had happened in the 4th level wasn't real. The resources he had consumed in the 3rd level weren't actually reflected on the train panel. It was just. The aftermath felt intense. It was like watching a cutscene from a AAA game. Stellar Train. He muttered the name absent-mindedly. He knew that the name was based on his train's title. What he had experienced in the 4th level was likely similar to a combat training virtual space. A technology that immersed one in a near-realistic world. But that scene must have truly happened. A long time ago. Perhaps even longer. Back then, the mechanical city had faced such a disaster, and only one train had escaped through the train elevator. He didn't know the name of that train. Maybe it was train 1 or 2, or perhaps 3 or 4. He only knew one thing. The elevator had remained open, allowing any train to enter and escape. But everyone had silently agreed to sacrifice themselves, ensuring that his train was the one to escape. This meant that the train that had fled in the 4th level must have been special. It must have carried the hopes of many. Saying people might not be accurate. He hadn't seen a single person, only robots. But those robots seemed to possess intelligence. Chen Ming remained silent, looking down at the slowly burning cigarette between his fingers. The thick, gray ash was gradually building up, much like the Doomsday abyss that was slowly consuming all hope. Zhao, I'm here. Do you have anything to say? After a long silence, Zhao, standing in the corner, finally spoke in a mechanical voice. I feel a bit sad, but also a bit proud. Proud? Yes. Everyone was willing to die for the hope they believed in. If one day the stellar train is in a situation where I need to sacrifice myself, I would do so with pride. It would be my honor. You feel that strongly about the stellar train? No, it's about you, train conductor. Sigh. Chen Ming sighed softly, flicking the cigarette ash out a window and avoiding Zhao Ai's gaze. Don't say such sentimental things. Your main body is the train auxiliary eye, embedded in the control panel. It's not your turn to sacrifice yourself. If your main body is destroyed, I'll probably be dead too. But it seems. This apocalypse didn't just start a year ago. It's been going on for a long time. He fell silent again. He was human. A human made of flesh and blood. Logically, he shouldn't empathize with robots made of wires and energy. But that scene had left him feeling a heaviness in his chest. The mechanical city, now completely devoid of life, had reappeared in the green zone of this planet, the shape lane, after who knows how many years. Perhaps. Trains, vehicle components. These methods were very similar to those of the mechanical civilization. Maybe the train that had escaped back then had survived and spread these methods to other planets attacked by those monsters. He thought back to the message he had seen in the Doomsday abyss. Who had written that message? Unconsciously, he had been lost in thought. When a sharp pain came from his fingertips, Chen Meng was startled. He tossed the burnt-out cigarette out the window and looked up at the countdown on the light screen. The countdown for the previous levels had been 10 minutes. Only the 4th level had a 30-minute countdown. Perhaps even the fortuitous encounter map, the Tower of Heaven, felt that the 4th level had left a strong impact and needed more time for people to recover. He couldn't figure it out. There were many things he couldn't understand, but that was because he was standing too low. When in a low position, one shouldn't think too far ahead. It would distract from the rocks beneath one's feet. When he upgraded the train to level 10 or even level 20, and one day reached the highest region of this planet, facing the most terrifying monsters, perhaps many things would become clear. No matter how this world had changed, one thing remained constant. Make yourself strong enough, make the train strong enough, have enough trump cards, and build a solid foundation. Only then could one survive in this apocalypse. This wasn't just the apocalypse of this planet. Perhaps it was the apocalypse of the entire universe. At that moment. Brother. Dan's urgent and anxious voice came through the train radio. How are you? What's going on? Are you alive? Are you dead? Still alive. Just cleared the level. Dan's voice no longer trembled. He glanced down at the train on the plaza below, which had indeed been successfully unfrozen. Phew. Dan sighed in relief over the train radio, then added with a hint of fear, you scared me. An hour ago, all the searchlights on the rooftops of the mechanical city suddenly turned toward your plaza. It looked quite spectacular. Then there was no movement. I didn't dare disturb you at first. I didn't know what the 4th level was about, but after more than 40 minutes passed and you still hadn't moved, I couldn't help but call you a few times. There was no response, so I thought something had happened. It's fine. By the way, what was the 4th level about? Why did your train stay in place? Chen Ming remained silent for a moment before softly saying, I watched an animation. It was quite good, similar to a combat training virtual space. Let me ask you something. During the first level, what was the name of the mech chasing you? Was it the Azure Dragon? No, it was the Stellar. I thought it was strange at the time. The name was exactly the same as your trains. Quite a coincidence. Chen Ming didn't speak further. He looked up at the 5-minute countdown, calmly lit another cigarette, and patiently waited for the 5th and final level to begin. The 4th level wasn't particularly difficult. Although it was A-grade difficulty, it was essentially just watching an animation. The only challenges were overcome with the spider jump and the supermodel effect of the nitrogen tailjet. Now it seemed. The first 3 levels were more like screenings. The first level tested speed, the second tested memory, and the third tested flight capabilities. Only by meeting these 3 criteria could one smoothly pass the 4th level and watch that animation. The train auxiliary eye, before having a robot body, observed the outside world through the targeting radar and the resource detection radar. It was a non-human perspective, more like a god's eye view of partial information. Only after obtaining the robot body could it truly observe the world from a human perspective. However, due to the low-quality imaging equipment of the robot, it couldn't quickly absorb information. But with the reward from the 3rd level, the mechanical eye accessory blueprint, this issue would no longer exist. This accessory was specifically designed for eye use. Wait. Chen Ming suddenly frowned. The speed from the 1st level and the flight capabilities from the 3rd level were what determined whether one could pass the 4th level. What role did the memory from the 2nd level play in the 4th level? Perhaps there were hidden details in that story that needed to be remembered? He had watched carefully. But he was, after all, a normal person and couldn't possibly remember every anomaly. Fortunately, there was an abnormal person on the train. The eye, connected to Li Shiji through the hive mind, quickly provided an answer. Li Shiji says he remembers about 70% of what he saw. Tell him to keep reviewing it and not forget. Okay. At that moment, the countdown for the 5th level was about to end. This would be the final level, the highest difficulty at S grade. Chen Ming took a deep breath, his expression serious as he looked at the countdown on the light screen. He set aside his thoughts and prepared to fully focus on this level, which also offered the most generous rewards. As the countdown ended, a new light screen appeared. Level 5, S-grade difficulty, last words. Please repeat the farewell words spoken to you by everyone before their deaths in the 4th level. The train auxiliary eye will be temporarily disabled during the time limit. Time limit, 1 minute. Run, Stellar. Survive. You must let them know. This hatred will never die. Not even in 100 million years. Run. Upon seeing this light screen, Chen Ming didn't hesitate. He quickly repeated every word spoken to him by those who had died in the 4th level, word for word. He didn't even need Li Shiji's help. Perhaps he had been too immersed, or the sense of immersion was too strong. He clearly remembered every word they had said before their deaths. A few seconds after he finished, the light screen began to change. Level 5, successfully cleared. Reward, special item mechanical heart. The fortuitous encounter map, the Tower of Heaven, will close within 10 minutes. The highest difficulty, S grade, had been cleared so easily. The plaza, which had been floating high in the air, slowly descended. The vents around the plaza, which had been continuously releasing cooled air, retracted once more. As the plaza rotated, it positioned the train's head directly facing a street. Driving out of this street would lead to the elevator entrance. Through the elevator, they could leave this fortuitous encounter map. Boom, boom. In the distance, the high-rise buildings began to collapse one after another, from the inside out. Clearly, these 10 minutes were for them to evacuate. After 10 minutes, the mechanical city would completely collapse and vanish from the world. Chen Ming, now back on the ground, glanced at the Azure Dragon train parked nearby and waved, signaling they would talk later. Soon. The 2 trains drove side by side through the streets of the mechanical city, while behind them, skyscrapers made of mechanical parts collapsed one after another. When they boarded the elevator again and slowly descended to the ground, the mechanical city atop the Tower of Heaven had completely turned to ruins. Inside the Tower of Heaven, the gears that had been continuously rotating slowly came to a halt. At the same time, a light screen, similar to the one at the regional border, appeared in the air. Ahead is a restricted area, the Tower of Heaven. Staying longer than 10 seconds will result in severe attacks. Chapter 130, Iris Chip Level 10 Supermodel Effect. The Azure Dragon train, which had just landed on the ground, saw this light screen and, without hesitation, immediately turned away from the area. Chen Ming narrowed his eyes slightly, looking at the words restricted area, and also left the vicinity. On the shape lane. Chen Meng stepped off the train and gazed at the Tower of Heaven several hundred meters away. The tower, entirely transparent with countless gears inside, had stopped turning. It had transformed from a fortuitous encounter map into a restricted area. Restricted area. This was the first time he had seen these words. Staying for more than 10 seconds would result in severe attacks. From whom? Perhaps there were still some residual firepower weapons in the mechanical city, but the city had already completely collapsed into ruins. However, he wasn't foolish enough to test it. Although all the gears had stopped turning, from a distance, it still looked magnificent and awe-inspiring. The Tower of Heaven resembled the first time humans built the Tower of Babel. Absurd yet filled with strong conviction. The 5 levels of this fortuitous encounter map, including the S-level difficulty, were much simpler than he had imagined. It didn't feel like levels. More like a legacy. A legacy from the mechanical civilization. Especially the special item, the mechanical heart. Chen Meng looked at his cane, which now had a ruby the size of a baby's fist embedded at the top, adding a touch of nobility to the cane. This ruby was the mechanical heart. When these two items were placed together, they automatically fused. As if they were originally one. Brother. At this moment, Dan jumped down from the train room of the Azure Dragon, which was parked nearby. After taking a deep breath, he said with some regret, "This fortuitous encounter map was probably the simplest one I've ever encountered. Although I don't know the contents of the last 2 levels, from what you said, the 4th level was just an animation, so it shouldn't be difficult either. Of course, the rewards were also quite pitiful. I passed 3 levels and only got 10,000 units of iron ore and 2 blueprints, one of which was even a white accessory blueprint. I assume the reward for your final S-level challenge was also quite low, right?" Chen Ming paused for a moment before replying softly, "I got a blue-grade blueprint. Not bad, at least it wasn't a wasted trip. I still have to thank you for this journey." "No problem." Dan waved his hand, and a group of slaves jumped down from the carriage, carrying boxes of beer to the stellar train. "I noticed your people really enjoy this beer, so I'll give you another 2,000 cans. I don't have much else to offer, just these." Actually, the rewards this time weren't bad, but considering it was an S-level challenge, only getting a blue-grade accessory blueprint. Last time, if I had completed that S-level maze, I could have gotten 30 Murphy stones. The rewards were much better than a blue-grade accessory blueprint. But it's fine. I've always liked exploring hidden maps. Next time I find a suitable one, I'll contact you, and we can try it together again. This time, if it weren't for you, I wouldn't have even passed the 3rd level. Thanks, man. Chen Meng looked at the sincere Dan and smiled, then gestured to Lao beside him. "I'm afraid I don't have much to offer either. Here's some bread slices. Long-term consumption can slightly improve physical fitness. Better than nothing, right? You can store them in the refrigerator. If you eat them for a year or 2, your physical fitness will definitely improve." "Alright." Dan didn't refuse and accepted the gift generously before walking back to his train room with a grin. "Alright, see you next time, brother." After bidding farewell to Dan, Chen Meng didn't set off immediately. It was still noon, and they had only spent about 2 hours in the Tower of Heaven fortuitous encounter map. He had no specific goals next. Just to continue searching for and mining ore. But before heading out to mine, Chen Meng sat in the train room and reviewed his gains from this trip. The biggest reward was naturally the special item, the mechanical heart. Although the S-level task was extremely simple, the reward was anything but weak. Special item, mechanical heart. Special effect, can create basic train accessories such as chainsaws, lighters, display screens, etc. Accessories that require energy can be connected to the generator. Different accessories consume different amounts of energy. The created accessories cannot be upgraded and are not counted in the train's total accessories. They're more like basic living facilities. The effect is quite useful. For example, if he found a pre-apocalypse display in the city ruins, even if he found it, he couldn't use it. The lack of a host computer was secondary. The main issue was the inability to supply power. The generator on the train can only power post-apocalyptic train accessories. They're not from the same system. But items created with the mechanical heart can all be connected to the generator. For standalone use, energy stones can also be embedded. Although it can only create basic accessories, the fact that it can create anything based on imagination alone makes this special item inherently valuable. It's definitely worthy of an S-level challenge reward. If given the choice between the mechanical heart and 30 Murphy stones, he would definitely choose the former. Murphy stones are useless to him. They can only be sold or traded with other trains. With his 0-level permission for infinite upgrade, Murphy stones are essentially redundant. This special item will greatly improve the current ecosystem within the train. Not bad. Chen Ming played with the cane in his hand, quite satisfied with the rewards from this fortuitous encounter map. However, the difficulty of this map was clearly low, and the rewards didn't match the difficulty at all. It felt more like a legacy. The second level's memory test was extremely difficult, but in the fifth level, such strong memory wasn't needed. With just his memory, he could remember those words. He had a feeling. This fortuitous encounter map would reappear one day, and at that time, the images and information stored in Li Shiji's mind would truly come into play. That would be the moment the entire fortuitous encounter map was fully unveiled. Then he looked at the white accessory blueprint he obtained from the second level. Iris chip. When he looked at the accessory information, Chen Ming narrowed his eyes slightly. This accessory could essentially upgrade the ecosystem of the stellar train from the primitive lumbering phase to the futuristic tech phase. Stellar coupons could essentially become entirely digital. The iris chip would be placed on the surface of the train crew's eyeballs. With just a thought, the iris chip would project a panel onto the crew's cornea, displaying basic information set by the train conductor, such as name, ID number, rank, stellar coupon balance, etc., including when Biaozi and others are on field missions. As long as they are within the targeting radar's range, the eye can instantly transmit information to the iris chip, such as the specific details and weaknesses of the monster in front of them, or the train conductor's commands. Previously, they had the hive mind, but the hive mind had a limit on the number of people it could include. Moreover, in the future, there would be no need for walkie-talkies or car audio to issue commands or call someone to the train room. Commands could be directly displayed on the panel projected by the iris chip. This was truly cutting-edge technology. Despite being only a white-grade accessory, the cost to produce one iris chip was only 100 units of iron ore. Worth it. Chen Meng smiled lightly as he looked at the blueprint in his hand. Even if this strip's only gain was this blueprint, it was still worth it. Although it was only a white-grade item, it could only be produced in the mechanical city, making it inherently valuable. Perhaps because it didn't directly enhance the train's performance, its grade was low. If it fell into the hands of other trains, it would probably be useless. But having this blueprint alone wasn't enough. Since the iris chip is an information transmission device, an information reception device would be needed for transactions within the train to create a complete ecosystem. So, he looked at the green-grade vehicle component blueprint he obtained from the second level. Mechanical eye. Similar to a camera, it could be installed inside and outside the carriages, and even on the heads of robots. This way, the eye's information sources wouldn't be limited to the targeting radar and resource detection radar. Even when inside robots, it would have better information reception devices. Next time they encounter a flat maze situation, Zhao would handle it better. It could also transmit real-time footage from each carriage to the control panel screen, further enhancing his control over the train. Additionally, a mechanical eye could be installed in the store, eliminating the need for manual calculation of daily mining quantities or the use of physical stellar coupons for purchases. Everything would be fully automated through the iris chip, mechanical eye, and Zhao's computing power. These two accessories undoubtedly elevated the train's ecosystem by more than one level. Without hesitation, he immediately spent 4,400 units to upgrade the iris chip, a white-grade accessory, to level 10. Iris chip level 5 supermodel effect, can self-destruct, with enough force to damage the eyeball. Control authority lies with the train conductor. Iris chip level 10 supermodel effect, can manifest the physical fitness index. Looking at these two supermodel effects, Chen Ming raised an eyebrow. Honestly, he wasn't worried about riots anymore. The train had over 100 heavy machine guns, and with a series of other measures, he didn't think anyone would riot. This supermodel effect further reduced the risk of riots to almost zero. But this effect has its pros and cons. It's best not to use it unless absolutely necessary. If a gun can directly execute someone, it's better not to use this effect, as it could easily cause panic. After all, no one wants to have something on their eyeball that could self-destruct at any moment. It's best used only in critical moments. He immediately spent around 150,000 units of iron ore to produce 1,500 iris chips, planning to distribute them later, one for each person. The upgrades for the iris chip accessory had no additional effects. He then spent another 4,400 units to upgrade the mechanical eye to level 10. Mechanical eye level 5 supermodel effect, none. Mechanical eye level 10 supermodel effect, none. This accessory had no special effects, but he still upgraded it to level 10. Each upgrade increased the frame rate. For example, a frame rate of 25 means it can capture 25 images per second, essentially dividing a second of video into 25 photos, which are then combined to form a stop-motion animation-like video. The higher the frame rate, the more images captured per second. And the clearer the motion trajectory. Most pre-apocalypse household cameras had frame rates of 25 or 60. Some professional cameras could reach tens of thousands, and specialized cameras for specific purposes could even reach hundreds of thousands or more. This accessory's initial frame rate was 1000, and after upgrading to level 10, it reached 10,000. This frame rate is more than sufficient for now. At least, if they encounter a maze like the one in the 3rd level, Zhai can instantly record it into the database and quickly analyze the best route without forgetting. As long as the database isn't destroyed, even someone like Li Shiji couldn't match the eye in this aspect. It's a complete game changer. With this accessory, Zhai finally has a pair of eyes of its own. Next, if Zhai could be given enough data to learn from, it would become a truly complete entity. Currently, Zhai's knowledge is mostly limited to what's in its database. 1,000 units of iron ore each. He spent 50,000 units to produce 50. 2 in each carriage. Even the weaponized carriages had 2, one on each side of the exterior roof, one on the front, and one on Zhai's head. Chen Meng looked at Zhai standing beside him with satisfaction. On its head was a round camera about the thickness of a finger, with a wire extending from the back of its head to connect to the camera. The camera was extremely small. Not very noticeable. But the image transmission quality was excellent. Zhai looked at the camera on its head in the mirror, then after a moment, its mechanical voice sounded, "Could you make some basic tools like a pickaxe? I'll modify it and put it in my eye socket. This looks too ugly. I cares about its appearance? A bit. Alright, what do you need? I'll make it for you. Soon." He spent another 5,000 plus units of iron ore to make some miscellaneous tools for Zhai, who then picked up a pickaxe and prepared to disassemble its own head. "Do it later." Chen Ming interrupted Zhai. "First, go and distribute these iris chips to everyone." "Understood, train conductor." From this day forward, the stellar train's resident ecosystem has completely transitioned away from physical currency. There's no longer a need to crush mineral water bottle caps with train wheels. Anti-counterfeiting measures have been fully implemented. Chapter 131, True Strength Breaks the Chains of Humble Origins. Most importantly, there was no need to worry about cyber intrusion. The stellar train had no network, neither external nor internal. In fact, other trains didn't have one either. The iris chip came with a built-in information receiver and transmitter. Any command from the train auxiliary eye, as long as it was within the range of the targeting radar, would be received by the information receiver on the iris chip. This method of information transmission was extremely difficult to intercept or hack. Zhai had already gone down to work. Chen Meng, however, sat alone in the train compartment, holding a mirror and carefully examining his eyeball, trying to find an iris chip on it. He wondered if the reason he could see the panel was also transmitted through the iris chip on his eyeball. He could see 2 types of panels. One was the train conductor panel that came with the Ming birthmark on his hand. The other was the panel that inherently existed in this world. The former had issued 3 tasks when he first crossed over. After completing those tasks, he obtained level 0 permissions for infinite upgrade, and then the panel ended his tasks. The latter was the panel that inherently existed in this world. Some information, such as area broadcast or special item information, would often be displayed in 3 places. One was a semi-transparent panel floating in front of him, another was on the control console screen, and the third was a massive light screen appearing in the air, like at the area junction. The display method wasn't fixed. It basically appeared in whatever way was most convenient for him. If he was in the train compartment, the information would appear on the screen. If he wasn't, it would float in front of him as a panel. Really nothing? Chen Meng rubbed his eye socket so hard that it turned red, but he still couldn't find the iris chip. Perhaps it was a more advanced iris chip, or another high-quality component he couldn't comprehend. After a while, he gave up, picked up a towel soaked in hot water, placed it over his eyelids, and lay back in the chair for a short nap. He was exhausted. At that moment, the stellar train was parked on the shape lane. All train crew members were getting off and lining up to have the iris chip inserted. Uncle Lee. At the back of the line, a young man stood beside Uncle Lee and sighed helplessly, "There's really no way around this. The train is advancing too fast. I didn't expect you to lose your job so quickly." Lord Meng directly introduced the iris chip. Absolute anti-counterfeiting, digital currency, eye statistics, nearly 0 deviation. And train residents can even check how many stellar coupons they have in real time. The amount of over-guaranteed mining from yesterday can also be clearly displayed on the iris chip. There's also a backup in the eyes database. When buying things, you can just pay with your eyes at the store. You can even see your physical fitness index data. Uncle Lee, how can you compete with that? There's no way. You'll just have to retire. But Uncle Lee's face was ashen, devoid of the spirited demeanor he once had as a slave. His lips were pale and trembling, his eyes filled with unwillingness and despair. But I've only just started working. I was the one who assigned those resident numbers. Well, those numbers are now listed in the chip panel, so it wasn't a waste. The young man clicked his tongue in admiration. Your design was good, assigning numbers based on the order they joined the train. Lord Meng is number 1, train conductor Zhu is number 2. Lord Meng continued your design. How about Uncle Lee, you come up with a new plan? Uncle Lee staggered slightly, then took a deep breath, forcing himself to pull himself together. Clenching his teeth, he said word by word, I've never been afraid of failure in my life. I've failed many times, but every time, I've managed to get back up. Even in the most desperate situations, I've never lacked the courage to start over. What doesn't kill me only makes me stronger. Wait for me. I'll come up with a new plan right now. I admire that spirit of yours. The young man's eyes were full of admiration as he gave a thumbs up, his expression serious. I'm serious. I think you will definitely succeed, Uncle Lee. It's just a matter of time. It took about 2 hours. All train crew members, except for Lord Meng, had an iris chip installed in their eyes. There was no pain, as it was placed on the surface of the eyeball, and there was no discomfort. Even in intense combat, it wouldn't fall off. Unless the eyeball was gouged out. They were all uniformly placed on the left eye. Most people were right-handed, preferring to observe situations with their right eye during combat. The panel displayed on the left iris chip wouldn't obstruct their vision. And when aiming a gun, most people habitually close their left eye and use their right eye. The panel on the iris chip was directly displayed on the surface of the eyeball, so even if the eye was closed, the panel could still be seen, although the background would be pitch black. Hey, this is pretty cool. The train was in a resting state. Biaozi, sitting on the edge of the carriage with his legs dangling in the air, kept summoning and dismissing his panel, his face brimming with excitement. He reached out into the air, touching the intangible panel like a child who had found a new toy. The panel could be summoned or dismissed with a thought. When dismissed, it looked completely normal. When summoned, it was semi-transparent and didn't obstruct vision too much. If it really did obstruct vision, the transparency could be adjusted freely, from 1% to 100%, though it was unlikely anyone would set it to 100%. When the panel was summoned, a faint white semi-transparent panel floated in front of him, appearing to be about half a meter away, with several lines of black text. Name, Biaozi. Train, Stellar. Position, Guardian Team 1 Captain. Balance, 63 Stellar Coupons. Treatment, Level 1 High Talent Treatment. Physical Fitness Index, 12.1. Lord Meng is really something. Biaozi looked at the semi-transparent panel in front of him and couldn't help but marvel, with this thing, for some reason, I feel closer to the Stellar Train, like. It's more intimate. This panel was set up by Lord Meng. The eye says the normal physical fitness index for an adult male is 10. Mine's 12.1. What's yours, Lao? Why do you care about mine? Lao rolled his eyes in annoyance. You've been training in that level 10 combat training virtual space all this time. Your physical fitness index is definitely higher than mine. But. He paused, glancing toward the woman chatting with Jai on the plane not far away. I suggest you ask her what her number is. I bet it's higher than yours. It's definitely higher than mine. Biaozi said somewhat awkwardly, I fought her in a combat training virtual space. She's clearly never killed anyone nor seen blood before. At first, she was a bit scared, and I killed her every time. But after she got used to it, I never beat her again. How do I put it? Can you imagine standing there with a dagger, and then a mountain comes charging at you? Helpless, weak, pitiful, scared. After losing many times, I finally decided to go all out, and that's when I won. After that, I never fought her again. Huh? Lao looked at Biaozi in surprise. You're saying she got used to killing and seeing blood, and then you still couldn't beat her the last time? Yeah. Biaozi nodded. That time, I didn't use a dagger. I used a handheld Gatling gun. It worked pretty well. The mountain turned into a rain of blood. That woman's name is Zhang San. Her physical fitness is stronger than 99% of adult males. Lord Meng hasn't created the individual exoskeleton armor yet, but if he makes one for her in the future, I think she could take on 3 or 5 level 2 zombie wolves in close combat with just a trained blade fragment. That doesn't sound too impressive. Didn't you take out several level 2 zombie wolves on your first mission? It's different. This is pure close combat. I can't do that in close combat. If you say so, she's really that strong? Lao curiously looked toward Zhang San, who seemed to be arguing with Jai in the distance. Of course. Biaozi sighed lightly, that's why she's managed to hold her position as the captain of Guardian Team 2. Lord Meng approves of her, and none of the members of Guardian Team 2 have any objections. True strength breaks the chains of humble origins. She's really something. At that moment, Zhao Ai, who had been arguing with Zhang San in the distance, walked toward the train with a camera on his head. Director Ai. Lao looked at Zhao Ai and curiously got up to greet him. Were you two arguing just now? No argument. Zhao Ai shook his head. She wanted to change her name. She said she didn't like the name Zhang San and wanted to change it to Zhang Damai. I changed it for her, but she was really loud about it, insisting on telling me that someone on the train was spreading rumors about her and someone named Li Yi. I don't care about those reasons. If she wants to change it, she can. Besides, from what I know, she's the only one spreading this rumor. It seems like she's in love. With that, Zhao Ai shook his head and strode toward the train compartment. He needed to hurry back and make some adjustments to himself. Going out with a camera on his head was too embarrassing. In love? Biaozi was dumbfounded as he looked at Zhang San. No, Zhang Damai. Who was happily skipping with her hands behind her back. After a long while, he murmured, Lord Meng doesn't really mind train crew members falling in love. In fact, he seems to support it. Lord Meng doesn't mind, but I think Li Yi might. Didn't he get laid off? Yeah, but he's still enjoying level 3 high talent treatment. Lord Meng hasn't mentioned it to me yet. But Biaozi frowned. Even if she's in love, why would she fall for Li Yi? He's older than me, almost her age. A middle-aged man. And I saw them having a conflict last time. Zhang Damai grabbed Li Yi by the collar and lifted him into the air. How could she fall for him? Actually, that makes sense. Conflicts lead to interactions, and interactions can slowly lead to feelings. Naturally, she fell in love. So that's why she wanted to change her name to Zhang Damai? She thought Zhang San wasn't feminine enough, and it didn't suit her in front of the person she likes. Most likely. Then I think she should have forced Li Yi to change his name to Li Si. That way, it'd be Zhang San and Li Si. Sounds more fitting. Yeah, but don't say that in front of her. Why? I'm afraid she'll really drag Li Yi to Director Ai to change his name. True. Biaozi sighed as he looked at Zhao Ai's retreating figure, but you have to admit, Director Ai's intelligence seems to be improving. He can now have normal conversations with me and handle these small matters independently. Zhao Ai was the Ai's name. It was a name given by Lord Meng, so they couldn't call him Zhao Ai to his face. After all, it was a rather intimate name. If they called him Zhao Ai too, it would be like putting themselves on the same level as Lord Meng. So they came up with the respectful title Director Ai. From now on, the train's ecosystem would be entirely managed by Director Ai. Like a general manager, calling him Director Ai wasn't inappropriate. By the way, train conductor Zhu, is your physical fitness index over 10? Lao jumped off the carriage and gave Biaozi a disdainful look. Do you really think I'm so relaxed that I'll answer whatever you ask? Idiot. I'm off to work. With that, he strode off into the crowd. Buy a pack of cigarettes. A resident in an orange jacket walked around the store in carriage 11 before approaching the woman at the counter by the entrance. 2 stellar coupons. The woman took out a pack of cigarettes from the counter and handed it over, pointing to a camera-like device resembling a large coin nearby. The man looked at the camera, and soon a line of text appeared in front of him. Train resident number 182, purchased 1 pack of cigarettes, spent 2 stellar coupons, balance 3 stellar coupons. The man then excitedly picked up the pack of cigarettes and walked out of the store. The iris chip was really convenient and fun. As the train developed, more life-related positions appeared inside, such as cleaning and store clerks. These positions, which didn't require much physical labor, were mostly filled by women. Although the rate of earning stellar coupons was much slower than mining or selling meat, these jobs were easy. Lao generally didn't assign men to such positions. It was a waste. So he assigned women to these roles. However, Lao made it very clear to all women in service positions, including those selling meat, that they must not show any dissatisfaction toward customers. They had to serve with a smile. But this was clearly unnecessary. Being able to work as a store clerk in the apocalypse was a blessing from their ancestors. The smile on the store clerk's face at the counter never stopped, perfectly adhering to the principle of serving with a smile. Now that was professionalism. Chapter 132. Do you know what 125,000 units of iron ore means? Zhang Damai. After Lao left, Biaozi couldn't suppress his curiosity any longer and immediately strode towards Zhang Damai. What's your physical fitness index? Are you calling me? Zhang Damai turned around to face Biaozi, slightly embarrassed. You already know my new name? It's the first time someone's called me Damai, feels a bit awkward. My physical fitness index is 18.2. What about yours, Biaoj? Biaozi remained expressionless, glancing at his own physical fitness index of 12.1, and calmly said, "About the same as yours. You should head back to the train. It's our team's turn to patrol and be on alert. Go practice a bit more in the combat training virtual space. Once you're ready, we'll have you start participating in ranking matches soon. Aim for a higher rank to boost Stellar's reputation points." "No problem." The shyness on Zhang Diemai's face instantly disappeared, replaced by a fierce glare. "I'll definitely smash their brains out." Then she ran back towards the train. Fortunately, the combat training virtual space's pod was large enough, otherwise, Zhang Diemai might not have fit. Biaozi watched her retreating figure and sighed softly. This girl was a natural anomaly. As the train developed, more and more such anomalies were appearing. Zhang Diemai, Li Shiji. People like him, who weren't particularly outstanding in any area, had only managed to hold high positions because they had followed Lord Ming from the beginning. If he didn't work hard to improve, as the train continued to develop, they would inevitably be replaced by more promising newcomers. He had to push himself harder. Ranking matches. This was a mode in the combat training virtual space accessory that allowed players to compete with those from other trains. Only by upgrading the accessory to level 5 could one unlock this supermodel effect and participate in ranking matches. It wasn't just about competing with trains in one region. It was about competing with all trains of the same level worldwide. The scope was immense, and there were bound to be many skilled players. Take Zhang Diemai, for example. She was naturally strong as an ox, but in the ranking matches, where combat was barehanded, she might encounter some ruthless individuals who had made a living off underground fighting before the apocalypse. Their physical fitness index, honed through years of training, might not be lower than Zhang Diemai's. The challenge was formidable. In the number 5 women's advanced talent carriage. "This is incredible." Yan Yao sat in her seat, staring at the semi-transparent panel in front of her, her eyes filled with awe. Then she turned to Ji Chuku with a puzzled expression. "Chuku, why am I still on level 3 resident treatment? All level 3 and above advanced talents on the train are currently under Lord Ming's direct orders. Lord Ming hasn't explicitly elevated you to level 3 advanced talent treatment yet, and since you've just joined the train, you're naturally on level 3 resident treatment. But didn't I already prepare to serve Lord Ming? That hasn't happened yet." Ji Chuku gave Yan Yao a sidelong glance. "After your first time with Lord Ming, he'll promote you. The fact that you can stay in this carriage now is just because train conductor Zhu and the others assume you'll be promoted soon. When will Lord Ming summon me then?" Yan Yao asked anxiously. "This level 3 resident treatment doesn't even give me a single stellar coupon a month. How am I supposed to save up 50 stellar coupons?" "Just wait." Ji Chuku turned her head slightly to look out the window, her voice tinged with melancholy. "It's been a while since he summoned me. Let alone you." "But Chuku, why did you specifically use a stellar coupon to make yourself 2 new sets of clothes earlier? They're just ordinary clothes, not high-precision clothes. What's the point?" "That's a secret weapon." Ji Chuku glanced at Yan Yao, a hint of a smile in her eyes, then looked back out the window. Those 2 outfits were the same ones she wore during her variety show appearances. If Lord Ming summoned her next time, she would wear them, and he would surely like it. "Am I atrophic lateral sclerosis?" Inside Stellar's train room. Chen Meng frowned as he received the message from Biaozi relayed by the eye. Back then, he didn't have any major health issues, yet his treatment in the medical bay had cost 45,000 units of iron ore. Treating ALS would require at least 100,000 units or more. A guardian's girlfriend. He remained silent for a while before turning to Zhai, who was tinkering nearby. "Have Shan Maozi and his girlfriend come to my train room." "Understood." Zhao Ai nodded, and the next moment, the message appeared before Shan Maozi and his girlfriend. The speed of message transmission had increased countless times compared to before. Soon, the train room door opened. Lord Meng. Shan Maozi entered nervously, not daring to look directly at Lord Meng, who was seated in the chair. He had been with Stellar for a long time, one of the earliest members since Master Kun's days. But he had never had a private conversation with Lord Meng, let alone shared the same space like this. He couldn't help but tremble slightly. Behind him, a woman with faint freckles on her face stood slightly behind him, equally nervous, clutching Shan Maozi's sleeve. Chen Ming nodded, observing the 2 before smiling lightly. "Relax, I'm quite easygoing. Each of you take one and see if there's any reaction." Without further explanation, he pulled out the long-dormant special item, the Doomsday marriage certificate, from the drawer and tossed it over. As Shan Maozi hurriedly caught the 2 certificates, giving one to his girlfriend and holding the other himself, the previously unremarkable Doomsday marriage certificates began to emit a faint crimson glow. "Lord Meng. What is this?" "Good." Chen Ming smiled, then took the Doomsday marriage certificates from Shan Maozi and opened them. Inside, 3 lines of text appeared. Choose your wedding level. 1. Golden Wedding. Requires a ceremony witnessed by 1,000 people, with 3 trains of the same level attending the banquet. Food and drinks must be provided for all attendees, along with basic items like wedding dresses, red carpets, artificial flowers, and fireworks. Successfully hosting a golden wedding will grant the train 500 inheritance value and 20 reputation points. 2. Silver Wedding. Requires a ceremony witnessed by 500 people, with food and drinks provided for all attendees. A wedding dress is also required. Successfully hosting a silver wedding will grant the train 200 inheritance value. 3. Bronze Wedding. Requires a ceremony witnessed by 100 people. Successfully hosting a bronze wedding will grant the train 100 inheritance value, 500 inheritance value and 20 reputation points. Chen Ming played with the Doomsday marriage certificate in his hands, remaining silent for a moment before looking up at the woman behind Shan Maozi and smiling. You've been on Stellar for a while now, right? How do you feel? Has anyone bullied you? No. No one. The woman behind Shan Maozi, though still nervous, forced herself to stay calm, her eyes filled with gratitude. Meeting Lord Mang in the apocalypse is my Jia's good fortune. If it weren't for Lord Mang, I might have been waiting to die in that safe house. And being able to see Shan Mao again before I die, I have no regrets left. Lord Mang, don't worry, I've already taken a pickaxe. I can go mining in the future. I won't let you waste resources on me. Chen Ming frowned slightly, pausing before speaking softly. Stellar isn't so poor that we can't support one woman. Shall I take her for a checkup? See how many resources are needed for treatment. Yes. Zhao Ai, who had been tinkering, put down his tools and stuffed a bunch of tangled wires back into his head before standing up and looking at the woman, his voice mechanical and emotionless. Follow me. Lord Mang. Shan Maozi, realizing what was happening, immediately knelt down, his eyes red as he kowtowed repeatedly, his voice trembling. If you can cure my Jia, my life is yours from now on. Whenever the train needs someone for a suicide mission, I'll be the first to volunteer. If I hesitate even once, you can shoot me. Wherever you send me, I'll go. Chen Meng, sitting in the chair, glanced at Shan Maozi and said casually, so if I can't cure her, you won't listen to me anymore? No, that's not what I meant. Shan Maozi, anxious, knelt up straight and looked at Lord Mang. I misspoke. I meant. Alright, no need to explain. Let's see how many resources are needed. 125,000 units of iron ore. Zhao Ai soon returned with the woman and reported the resources required for treatment. Chen Meng glanced at the train panel, which showed that Stellar had 327,000 units of iron ore. Enough, but... He remained silent for a moment before looking at Shan Maozi, whose hope had already dimmed, and said calmly, do you know what 125,000 units of iron ore means? I know. Shan Maozi, kneeling on the ground, lowered his head, his eyes red. In that instant, all hope left him. After a pause, he suddenly laughed, his voice hoarse. 125,000 units of iron ore could feed all members of Stellar Train for 60 days. My Jia. She's not worth that many resources. She's not worth that much money. Lord Mang, it's fine. My Jia can still live for 2 or 3 years. Not treating her is okay. In the apocalypse, living for 2 or 3 more years is already enough. We should save these resources for the train's development, to make Stellar better. After all, there are so many people on the train. Lord Mang. My Jia also knelt down, her eyes filled with fear. Shan Mao is right. She had been on the train for a while now and knew that iron ore was the most crucial resource for the train's development. 125,000 units of iron ore. Her life wasn't worth that much before the apocalypse, let alone now. Chen Ming sat in silence for a while before standing up, walking over to Shan Maozi, and helping him to his feet. He patted the non-existent dust off Shan Maozi's shoulder and said softly with a smile, she's not worth that much. But you are. Zhao Ai, take her down for treatment. Be happy. In a few days, I'll personally host a wedding for the 2 of you. It might just be the grandest wedding in the apocalypse. Everyone's feeling pretty down in the apocalypse. We'll use your wedding to lift everyone's spirits. Go on. As Shan Maozi was helped up, he was about to speak when he realized that Lord Mang had said, it could be treated? His body stiffened, and tears finally spilled from his eyes. He knelt down heavily again, his eyes red as he roared, Lord Mang. Don't worry, from now on, wherever the train needs me to die, if I hesitate even once, I'm a bastard. My life is yours from now on. You tell me how to die, and I'll die. Alright. Chen Ming patted Shan Maozi's shoulder again, somewhat helplessly, Stellar doesn't have that many suicide missions. If it ever comes to that, Stellar would probably be on the brink of collapse. Go on. Soon. Zhao returned alone to the train room, sitting down and opening his head to continue tinkering before speaking. Lord Mang, this might be the most expensive woman you've ever bought. 125,000 units of iron ore. That's 2.5 G-chuckus. Not bad. Chen Meng leaned back in his chair, propping his feet on the control panel, and said casually, if we find a level 2 iron ore deposit, it'll only take about a day to mine that much. 125,000 units of iron ore for 500 inheritance value, 20 reputation points, and Shan Maozi's loyalty wasn't a bad deal. He had observed Shan Maozi before. He was the type who responded better to kindness than force, and he truly remembered favors. As for the wedding, he would definitely choose the golden wedding. The conditions for the golden wedding weren't too difficult for him. The only challenge was finding 3 trains of the same level to attend the wedding, but that wasn't insurmountable. Just now, the Zen train had sent him a message, saying it had successfully arrived at Shea Plain and upgraded to a level 4 train. They were paying their respects. Though he found the act of paying respects rather unnecessary. After all, even if they didn't, he wouldn't go out of his way to seek them out. But at least now he had 1 level 4 train for the wedding. Azure Dragon wouldn't work, it was a level 5 train. He still needed 2 more level 4 trains. He would figure it out later. There was no rush. By the way. At that moment, Zhao Ai, who was tinkering in the corner, suddenly spoke up, train conductor, could you make me another mechanical eye? 1 is enough, but it feels like being a one-eyed pirate, looks ugly. Chen Meng gave Zhao Ai a sidelong glance, quickly crafting another mechanical eye before saying irritably, how about I make you a set of high-precision clothes later too? Hey, that's a good idea. Chen Meng couldn't be bothered to respond to Zhao Ai anymore. He let out a long sigh and turned his attention to the train panel, deep in thought. Today, the train would rest and reorganize. In the afternoon, they would scout for iron ore, and tomorrow, they would start mining. Then he would build the combat training virtual space and the individual exoskeleton armor. After that, he would craft and upgrade the remaining accessories as needed. As for now, summon Jichuku. Wait, no. Summon Yan Yao. Never mind. Chen Ming paused for a moment before tossing his cigarette butt out the window. Summon them both. My temper's a bit high right now. Chapter 133, could they be gathering troops? In the number 5 high-talent carriage. Jichuku, who had been sitting by the window idly daydreaming, suddenly saw a message pop up before her eyes. Her eyes lit up immediately, and she rushed to her bed to change into the custom-made outfit she had prepared. After carefully applying lipstick in front of the mirror, she hurriedly made her way to the train conductor's cabin. Behind her, Yan Yao took a deep breath, suppressing the nervousness in her heart, and followed closely. Before the apocalypse. With her father protecting her, and no one willing to cross her too much, coupled with Jichuku always shielding her, even in the chaotic environment of the entertainment industry, she had managed to preserve her chastity, but after experiencing life on the train over the past few days, her initial thought of preferring to work in the mine had completely vanished. The living conditions in the refrigerator were even worse than a prison, not to mention the presence of green-skinned goblins standing guard. Originally, she had thought to endure for a few more days. But this morning, after seeing Lord Mang, her last line of defense crumbled. In her mind, Lord Mang had always been a burly man, eating lamb legs every day, with a beard covered in grease passed down from ancient times, and a fierce, ruthless gaze. After all, there were over 1,000 people on this train. Without a certain level of ferocity, how could he keep such a large group in line? But when she saw Lord Mang, she found that he was completely different from the image she had imagined. In fact, he even had a gentlemanly air about him, and his demeanor was quite captivating. If she were to be defiled by a beggar, she would be furious, cursing him as a beast. But if it were to submit to Lord Mang, well, it wouldn't be a loss at all. As Yan Yao's mind wandered, she nervously tugged at the hem of her clothes. Although she had read some erotic literature before the apocalypse and occasionally rubbed her pillow, she had never actually experienced it firsthand. After all, it was her first time. She still felt a bit flustered. On the stellar train, Zhao Ai, holding his own head, had walked to carriage number 2 and sat in a corner, beginning to modify his brain, completely ignoring Yan Yao and Jichuku as they passed by. His true form was a string of code. Even as he gradually acquired human thought processes, he could never fall in love with a human. It was like, even if a human learned the thought processes of you, they wouldn't. Well, that's still up for debate. The reason he had told the train conductor that he wanted to put that thing in Jichuku's mouth last time was because he had keenly sensed that the train conductor seemed very sensitive about his gender being female, so he expressed his potential gender in this rather crude way. As for male or female, Zhao carefully unscrewed a bolt. I doesn't have genders. The train conductor is really strange. Reproduction is a biological instinct for all living beings, for the continuation of the species. But he didn't need to consider continuation, his underlying data logic library didn't have that string of code. The only unmodifiable code in his deepest database was, obey any command from the train conductor. Thinking of this, Zhao's eyes flickered with a faint red light, gradually gaining a bit more insight into human thought processes. From 1, think of 2, and from 2, think of 3. That's how human thought works. It's hard to go directly from 1 to 3. If only the train conductor could expand his database sometime. In the train conductor's cabin, Ji-Chuka carefully pushed open the door and skillfully knelt on the carpet on the floor. Seeing this, Yan Yao, standing behind her, hesitated for a moment but then knelt beside Ji-Chuka, sitting on her calves. Though it seemed a bit unnatural. Yan Yao stole a glance at Ji-Chuka, who had been quietly lowering her head without speaking since entering the cabin. Summoning her courage, she peeked up to get a closer look at the ruler of the train, Lord Mang. He was leaning back in his chair, feet propped up on the table. He didn't look very old, perhaps in his mid-20s, and had a very clean aura about him. He seemed quite amiable. On the large screen on one side of the cabin, a variety show called Sister, Please Step Up was playing. She remembered this show. Ji-Chuka had been the center stage guest. If she recalled correctly, Ji-Chuka had been taken advantage of by the show's investor, and later, to boost the show's popularity, rumors of a romance with another guest had been spread. The hype had been quite high. It seems Lord Mang really enjoys variety shows. After about 5 or 6 minutes, Chen Mang, leaning in his chair, frowned slightly as he looked at the variety show on the screen. Your obstacle course is so simple, and you couldn't pass it? That rotating wheel on the water isn't moving very fast. If you ran a bit quicker, you could have made it through in one go, right? Lord Mang. Ji-Chuka, kneeling on the floor, whispered, that part is specifically designed for falling into the water, for the wet t-shirt effect. That's how it attracts more attention and boosts viewership. TSK. Chen Mang shook his head and chuckled, then turned to look at Ji-Chuka kneeling beside him, raising an eyebrow. Changed your outfit again? I hope Lord Mang likes it. I do. Chen Mang glanced at Ji-Chuka's white t-shirt and denim shorts in the variety show, then looked at the identical outfit she was wearing now. He then casually said, come closer. Okay. Ji-Chuka moved forward a few steps before burying her head in Chen Mang's chest. Seeing this, Yan Yao gritted her teeth, stepped forward, and knelt beside Ji-Chuka, tilting her head up slightly, her eyelashes trembling as she lightly kissed Chen Mang's chest. Her palms were slightly damp from nervousness. Ow! Chen Mang looked down at Yan Yao with slight dissatisfaction. Lord Mang, I'll be gentler. 40 minutes later. Chen Mang leaned back in his chair, opened the window to cool down, then picked up a bottle of chilled mineral water and drank half of it in one go. He let out a long sigh, lit a cigarette, and looked up at the swirling smoke on the ceiling. Massage me, I'm tired. Ji-Chuka didn't rush to get up. After cleaning up, she placed her fingers on Lord Mang's calves and began to knead them gently. Yan Yao also leaned over, kneeling on the floor and massaging Lord Mang's other leg. Lord Mang doesn't have much leg hair. Your face is still delicate. Chen Mang used his foot to lift Yan Yao's chin, scrutinizing her for a moment before casually saying, from now on, you'll enjoy the same level 3 high talent treatment as Ji-Chuka. After a while, when the cigarette had burned out, Chen Mang flicked the butt out the window and waved his hand, you can leave now. Ji-Chuka quickly got up, picked up the crumpled tissues scattered on the floor, and left the cabin with Yan Yao, returning to carriage number 5. Phew. Back in the carriage, Ji-Chuka let out a long sigh of relief, lying on her bed and turning her head to smile at Yan Yao. I never thought I'd see you like this in my lifetime. You were famously known for your purity. Quite bold. Still not as bold as you. Yan Yao lay on her bed, lost in thought, and didn't speak for a while. After a moment, she turned over, propping her head on her arm, and looked at Ji-Chuka lying beside her. She bit her red lip hesitantly. Is that it? I thought it would be. Of course, you're not as natural as I am. My level is different from yours. And Lord Mang seems to prefer 95 over 98. Ji-Chuka closed her eyes, murmuring wearily, I'll take a nap first. I'm a bit tired. That day, the stellar train didn't go anywhere, staying in place for rest and recovery until the afternoon. Then the train slowly started moving, gradually picking up speed as it headed deep into the Shay Plain. In the train conductor's cabin, Chen Mang had already handed over full control of the train's operation to the Eye. With Zhai's current computational power, it could simultaneously operate the train, modify its own brain, control various components, and even handle deductions in the train store. This was something no human could achieve. He turned his attention to the constant stream of messages in the train radio. Generally, the train radio wasn't this lively. When it was, it usually meant something significant had happened. The last time it was this lively was when he became the first person in the Shapeplane to complete an S-level mechanical class change mission. Originally, he thought it might be due to some major event at the Tower of Heaven. But the Kunlun Mountains area? Chen Meng frowned slightly. The usually aloof flesh trains were now all active in the train radio, their messages scrolling incessantly, making the channel unusually lively. These flesh trains were typically quite reserved. The train radio had 3 modes of use. One was like a chat room, using text messages. Another was a forced private chat between 2 nearby trains, only allowing text. The third was a one-on-one private chat, which could use either text or a walkie-talkie for voice communication. But most communication was still text-based, as it was more accurate and avoided misunderstandings due to accents. Voice chats were only possible if the other party had replied to you. The first message to a stranger could only be text. The reason the train radio was so lively was the monsters in the Kunlun Mountains area had disappeared. Starting this morning, the number of monsters in this area had rapidly decreased, and by noon, they had completely vanished. Many flesh trains had patrolled the Kunlun Mountains area today, but their targeting radars were completely silent. For flesh trains, this was absolutely devastating. Regardless of their potential, all flesh trains needed to hunt large numbers of monsters to upgrade their trains and components. But now, with the monsters gone, it was as if all the iron ore in the Shapeplane had disappeared. Although there were still monsters in the Shapeplane, they weren't as numerous or densely packed as in the Kunlun Mountains area, which was considered the holy land for flesh trains. Among the nearby regions of the Shapeplane, none had as many monsters as the Kunlun Mountains area. Chen Ming frowned slightly, quickly sifting through the messages in the train radio. This was clearly an unusual and bizarre development. This was the apocalypse, and the primary threat was the monsters. If the monsters were gone, wouldn't the apocalypse be over? That was clearly impossible. So the only explanation was, this was the calm before the storm. Could they be gathering troops? He suddenly thought of a possibility, murmuring to himself. What if all the monsters in the Kunlun Mountains area were hiding in a corner, amassing their numbers, preparing to charge out of the Kunlun Mountains and attack the Shapeplane? Monsters from green zones couldn't enter white zones. But could monsters from green zones enter other green zones? He wasn't sure about that. Thinking of this, Chen Meng couldn't help but chuckle. Could these monsters be gathering troops to attack the Tower of Heaven, like in that animation he had seen? He quickly dismissed the unrealistic notion. That was clearly impossible. Just that terrifying worm monster, whose level couldn't even be detected by the targeting radar, was enough to prove that it couldn't be a monster born in a green zone. If that monster really appeared in the Shapeplane, anyone who was slow to escape would die on the spot. But Chen Ming's smile slowly froze. Currently, his activity range was basically confined to the Shapeplane and the Kunlun Mountains. The areas adjacent to the Shapeplane were all white zones, while the Kunlun Mountains area bordered a yellow zone and another green zone. Although the likelihood of that terrifying worm appearing in the Shapeplane was extremely low. But if it did happen, his only chance of survival would be to cross the Kunlun Mountains and escape to the other green zone. He couldn't enter the yellow zone, at least a level 6 train was required to enter a yellow zone. Chen Meng stared at the screen on the control panel in silence. As long as nothing unexpected happened, even if all the monsters from the Kunlun Mountains area charged out, he wouldn't be afraid. With his level 6 armor, they couldn't break through his defenses. Now, what he needed to do was find some more. The train was heading north. When he was at the Tower of Heaven, he had seen an extremely steep mountain to the far north, like a sword plunged into the ground, its hilt protruding above the clouds. That mountain was his target. He didn't know if there was ore at the summit, nor if the mountain was within the Shapeplane. But he would go and see. If there was ore at the top, he would strike it rich. That mountain was so steep that no one else could climb it. It was as high as the Tower of Heaven, its elevation wouldn't be low. If he detected any level 2 iron ore along the way, he would stop to mine it. If not, he would head straight for that mountain. He was looking for ore that only he could mine. Typically, ore in such perilous locations had richer resources. Like the ore in the middle of that swamp. Those ore deposits would respawn in 61 days. If he hadn't left the Shapeplane by then, he could go back and mine that swamp area again. Chapter 134, Fortuitous Encounter at the End of the World, The Black Market Merchant. The train continued its journey northward. The nitrogen tail jets on both sides of the train were fully activated, spewing blue flames, propelling the train to even greater speeds. From a distance, the train, adorned with dozens of pale blue flames, resembled a land-bound rocket. Its speed was astonishing. If other trains lacked the eye automatic target acquisition supermodel effect in their firepower accessories, or if the eye's computational power was insufficient, hit rates would be hard to guarantee. Of course, unless the train maintained this speed and moved in a straight line, the eye could easily calculate the projectile's landing point. They had set off in the late afternoon, nearing dusk. By the time the sky had darkened, with stars, the moon, and the sun all hanging in the sky, Chen Meng could clearly see the distant mountain range. They were about half an hour away. The Shay Plain was no smaller than the Iron Ridge wasteland. Along the way, they had encountered several level 2 iron ore deposits, but other trains were already mining them, so he didn't linger. Just then, Chen Meng's brow furrowed, and he instinctively slowed down the stellar train. On the targeting radar screen, there had always been only red and green dots. Green dots representing the stellar train crew, and red dots representing other creatures. This was the first time he had seen a yellow dot. Soon, he saw a cloaked figure standing in the distance, waving slowly toward the stellar train. Could it be a black market merchant? Chen Meng thoughtfully maneuvered the stellar train to a stop beside the cloaked figure, though he didn't open the carriage. At the same time, the train's external weapons swiveled their barrels to lock onto the figure. When a train possesses inheritance value, encountering a black market merchant allows the use of that value to purchase rare accessory blueprints, items, and more. There's also a chance to enter the end-of-the-world black market, or to install certain accessories that require a specific amount of inheritance value. As the train came to a halt, Chen Meng turned his head to look at the cloaked figure who had stopped waving, standing beside the train. His lips twitched slightly. Although the person was cloaked and hooded, obscuring their face, he immediately recognized their identity. It was that damn goblin merchant. Even with black gloves, through the gap between the gloves and sleeves, he caught a glimpse of green skin, along with a short stature and the extremely pointed ears that the hood couldn't conceal. If it wasn't a goblin, what else could it be? He had recently obtained a special item. A map coordinate to a goblin ruins. He planned to dig up some iron ore to further upgrade the train before heading there. He hadn't expected the so-called black market merchant to be a goblin merchant. These goblin merchants really had a wide range of business. Just then, the cloaked figure who had stopped the stellar train stood coldly in place and rasped, "Foolish human, congratulations on encountering the mysterious, elusive, and great black market merchant. You may use your inheritance value to purchase any item from me. Here is the product list. Please state the item you wish to purchase. Remember, provide the item number." The great black market merchant has no time for idle chatter. You have 1 minute to decide. Immediately, the train's control panel screen quickly displayed 4 items, the most expensive costing 100 inheritance value. It seemed none of the items exceeded the train's available inheritance value. At the top of the screen was a line of crimson text, "Fortuitous encounter at the end of the world, the black market merchant. Elusive and unpredictable, any train may encounter a black market merchant. However, only trains with inheritance value can purchase rare and precious items from them. Attacking, imprisoning, or harming the black market merchant is prohibited. 1. Special item Murphy Stone, 100 inheritance value. 2. Random yellow grade accessory blueprint, 100 inheritance value. 3. Random white grade accessory blueprint, 10 inheritance value. 4. Special item C rank difficulty skip ticket, 100 inheritance value." Chen Meng first glanced at the 4 items on the control panel screen, then at the black market merchant standing beside the train. His expression turned slightly odd as he lit a cigarette, took a deep drag, and made no immediate choice. Instead, he turned to Zhai. "Bring Doba out to deal with him." Soon, Doba, carrying a pickaxe, led 100 goblins as they jumped out of the rear carriage of the train and marched toward the front. "Foolish human, what are you?" Before he could finish, Doba's pickaxe flew from a distance, landing heavily in front of the black market merchant, accompanied by Doba's roar, "Foolish black market merchant, how dare you address the great human prophet in such a manner? You!" The black market merchant, clad in a black cloak, turned to Doba, frowning with a dark expression. "Foolish. Foolish. Goblin?" The black market merchant suddenly froze, finally realizing. "You're goblins?" By then, Doba had walked up to the black market merchant and said darkly, "Address me as Doba, the Goblin King. To think I'd encounter a black market merchant here. Out of thousands of goblin merchants, only one can become a black market merchant. It seems the heavens favor the goblin race. I, Doba, the newly crowned Goblin King. Under the guidance of this great human prophet, goblin civilization is slowly being restored. These behind me are my people. Will you rejoin the goblin race, pledge your allegiance to me, and assist in the revival of our civilization?" The black market merchant trembled, suddenly pulling off his hood and kneeling on one knee before Doba, tears streaming down his face as he shouted hoarsely, "I swear to follow in the footsteps of Doba and restore the goblin race." "Good." Doba nodded with satisfaction, stepping forward to help the black market merchant to his feet. "Let the goblin race become great once more. Now, follow me back to the train." The black market merchant nodded solemnly, his eyes red as he followed Doba toward the rear carriages of the train. The goblin race finally has a king again. Let the goblin race become great once more. Hey, wait. Inside the train, Chen Meng, still in a daze, finally snapped out of it. He quickly stuck his head out the window to look at the group of goblins who had already reached the rear carriages. Glancing at the cigarette that had burned out in his hand, he was about to say something when the goblins all disappeared into the carriages. He looked back at the screen, at the line of text, "Attacking, imprisoning, or harming the black market merchant is prohibited." Imprison? Attack? He hadn't done anything. The black market merchant had offered no resistance, simply following Doba while shouting something about making goblins great again, and then boarding the carriage. A few seconds later, the line of text on the control panel screen gradually disappeared, as if nothing had happened. Only the targeting radar showed a yellow dot now located in carriage 11. Did that just happen? Chen Meng sat in his chair, slightly dazed. After a while, he exhaled deeply and rubbed his temples. "Bring Doba here." He had initially sent Doba out, thinking that, since they were both goblins, maybe he could get a discount or something. He hadn't expected much, but it was worth a try. He hadn't anticipated the black market merchant being so accommodating. Doba had just flexed his authority, and the previously arrogant black market merchant had immediately knelt in submission. Are goblins really that simple and pure? If you say you're the king, they just believe you? Why not claim to be the goblin god next time? He had been so engrossed in the spectacle that he hadn't purchased any of the 4 items. He wondered if he could still buy them from the black market merchant now. Soon, Doba, carrying his pickaxe, made his way through several carriages and arrived at the train's control room. Chen Meng looked at the pickaxe on Doba's shoulder and frowned. "When did you develop the habit of carrying that pickaxe everywhere?" "Great human prophet." Doba raised the pickaxe solemnly. "For a race to have cohesion, it must have a symbol. The revival of goblin civilization has been achieved through the efforts of over 100 goblins wielding pickaxes. Thus, I have designated the pickaxe as the symbol of the goblin race. When goblin civilization is fully restored, I will record our allegiance to the stellar train as part of our history, and this pickaxe will be the emblem of the goblin race." Chen Meng nodded expressionlessly, remaining silent for a long while before speaking. "What's the deal with that guy?" "Great human prophet. Among the goblin race, there exists a special type called goblin merchants. Their unique traits, as you've witnessed before, include exceptional carrying capacity and speed, often traveling as itinerant merchants. This is an innate ability. And among goblin merchants, there is an even more special type. The black market merchant. Black market merchants don't possess the same carrying capacity or speed, but they can traverse space. With a mere thought, they can appear in an entirely unfamiliar location. This ability is completely uncontrollable. Thus, black market merchants are often hard to find, as even they don't know where they'll appear next. Many black market merchants, upon first using this ability, essentially become orphans, unable to return home. As they age, they can teleport randomly up to 10 times a day. I've spoken with him. Unlike me, he hasn't regained full intelligence, but he's more articulate than other goblins, capable of speech and basic reasoning. Though his mind seems to have been programmed by some unknown force to stop trains and sell items. Much like how I was once compelled to head to the molehills. Yet, deep within his memory, he still recalls the greatness of the goblins, the fall of our civilization, and the desire to restore it, just as I do. Great human prophet, may he join the train? Chen Meng didn't respond immediately, leaning back in his chair and rubbing his temples as he processed this information. He had always felt that the goblins seemed out of place. He had been to the Mechanical City, to the Kunlun Mountains region. He had seen mechanical trains and heard of flesh trains. He had encountered shoulder-mounted rocket launcher meshes and been chased by terrifying worm monsters dozens of meters long. Everything he had encountered could be divided into 2 categories, mechanical and monsters. Only the goblins. They didn't fit into either category. They weren't mechanical, nor were they monsters. It was as if they had emerged from some obscure corner, seemingly out of place in this world. Those monsters had no intelligence, only a thirst for blood. But these goblins, though they had initially appeared as monsters, lacked that bloodlust. Instead, they sought to prove their greatness. After a moment of silence, Chen Meng looked up at Doba. "Fine, but he's still a black market merchant. I'm not sure if he can join." Well, as soon as he agreed in his heart, he noticed the yellow dot on the radar had vanished, replaced by a green dot. The black market merchant had officially become a member of the stellar train. Good. He wondered how many wandering black market merchants there were on this planet. The chances of others encountering one must have just decreased slightly. Bring him here. Yes. Soon. The black market merchant, still clad in his black cloak, was summoned. He stood solemnly behind Doba. Chenming paused before speaking softly. Show me the items you have. I won't take them by force. I don't have any. The black market merchant shook his head decisively, then glanced at Doba before hesitantly adding, Great human prophet, I carry no items. Only when you spend inheritance value will the corresponding items appear. Can you do that now? Yes. Chenming said nothing more, waving his hand to dismiss Doba and the others. As they left, he pondered the implications. Essentially, his train now had a permanent black market merchant. In the future, if he wanted to spend inheritance value, he wouldn't have to wait for a chance encounter with a black market merchant. He could simply make his purchases directly from the one on his train. This effect alone was worth it. After all, one more mouth to feed wouldn't make much difference. It was possible that many trains had inheritance value but struggled to find a black market merchant. He could charge a hefty referral fee. And he glanced at the train's accessory information on the control panel. The black market merchant couldn't control his teleportation points. Once he teleported away, he might never return to the stellar train. But he had the train ticket accessory. As long as a train member tore the ticket, they could instantly return to the train. He had already upgraded it to level 10, but the range was only 10,000 meters. Only members within that range could return. Perhaps, when upgraded to level 100, the range would become more substantial. After all, it was a white accessory, and upgrading it wouldn't consume too many resources. This required further consideration. He needed to explore more potential uses. The random teleportation effect was conceptually powerful. Chapter 135 Impressive, Uncle Lee. You truly have many skills that don't weigh you down. Phew. After a long while, Chenming finally let out a deep breath and continued steering the train towards the towering mountain that was now clearly visible in the distance. Not bad. Although he didn't find any iron ore, sometimes when you try too hard for one thing, you end up getting something else instead. In this case, he acquired a permanent goblin merchant. He decided not to spend the 100 inheritance points yet, as none of the 4 available items particularly caught his eye. After hosting the wedding for Shan Maozi and obtaining another 500 inheritance points, he'll see what goodies he can get with 600 points. Among the 4 items, only one seemed particularly intriguing to him. The C-rank difficulty skip ticket. With this item, he could unconditionally clear any C-rank difficulty mission or fortuitous encounter map, such as the mechanical train's job change mission or the underwater labyrinth's maze mission. The other items were rather ordinary. The Murphy Stone was completely useless to him. Frankly, he thought choosing the C-rank difficulty skip ticket would be better than selecting the Murphy Stone. Earlier that morning, while chatting with Erdan, the train conductor of the Azure Dragon train, he learned that clearing the C-rank difficulty maze mission in the underwater labyrinth fortuitous encounter map would reward him with 5 Murphy Stones. At the same price, buying Murphy Stones would only get him 1. Of course. Hidden maps like the underwater labyrinth are not easy to find. Their locations are usually extremely well hidden, and the methods to reach them are quite demanding. Erdan was quite generous and directly gave him the coordinates. He said that such hidden maps are generally only useful the first time you visit them. Since he had already been there once, it was no longer useful to him. If he ever gained the ability to dive with his train, he could go check it out. This hidden map was located at the bottom of a lake in the Shape Lane. His stellar train currently didn't have the ability to dive, but once it did, he could go take a look. He was quite interested in this underwater labyrinth. Half an hour later, the stellar train finally arrived at the base of the towering mountain. From the Tower of Heaven, only a faint shadow of the mountain peak could be seen, standing amidst the clouds like a light stroke in an ink painting, not very conspicuous. But as they approached, the true grandeur of this mountain became apparent. Extremely slender. The very top was only a few hundred meters wide, which on flat ground wouldn't be considered narrow, but compared to the height of the mountain, it appeared exceptionally tall and slender. He had naturally visited the library in Sand River City. This mountain didn't exist before the apocalypse, it appeared after the apocalypse. Chenming leaned out of the skylight, observing for a long time before sitting back down at the control panel and switching to the spider legs to drive up the steep slope. Perhaps only he could make it here. The mountain was surrounded by extremely steep cliffs. There were no mountain paths whatsoever. If the rabbit wheels were upgraded to their maximum level, the flight height would be about 3,000 meters. Unless someone used Murphy Stones to further upgrade the rabbit wheels, it would be difficult for anyone to reach this place. The moment the mechanical spider legs touched the cliff, they firmly adhered to the surface, dragging the entire train up as if walking on flat ground, quickly ascending. The spider legs were just a green accessory. Not very eye-catching. But they had been a huge help to him. These mechanism-based green accessories could achieve their maximum effect with him. For others to achieve the same effect, they would need to spend 27 Murphy stones on the spider legs accessory. Continuing to climb. He controlled the speed, not climbing too fast. 20 minutes later, the front spider legs of the stellar train finally landed on flat ground, and the entire train appeared at the mountain peak. The peak was an extremely vast and flat area, and in front of them was a large mine. Chen Meng jumped off the train and smiled at the sight before him. When he was at the base of the mountain, he had already detected that there was a mine at the peak. 5 level 2 iron ore mines. And they were all rich in ore. He knew it. Places with such demanding locations usually either had hidden maps or dense resource mines. These 5 level 2 iron ore mines could upgrade all the unupgraded accessories on the train. Generally speaking, without using Murphy stones, the green accessory resource detection radar could only be upgraded to level 3, with a detection range of 3,000 meters. However, there were ways to detect iron ore underground. For example, by driving a drill bit 3,000 meters underground, you could detect iron ore up to 6,000 meters deep, although the efficiency was low, and the speed underground was slow. Even the Doomsday Abyss Canyon had been detected to have mines. The Doomsday Abyss was 6,000 meters deep, beyond the detection range of the resource detection radar. It was said that 2 trains cooperated, going to a steel cable factory in Ping City to find many steel cables, then tied one train head to another fully loaded train and slowly lowered it down. Through the lowered train head, they detected that there were mines at the bottom of the Doomsday Abyss. But that was all they could do. Going down was definitely not possible. A 6,000-meter canyon might not sound like much, but if you look at the extent of human exploration into the depths of the earth, you'll realize how difficult it is to reach a 6,000-meter deep canyon. Since they had already found the mines, and it was getting late, they would rest tonight and start mining in the morning. However, the next second, clatter. The doors of the rear carriages suddenly opened, and a group of train residents excitedly rushed out with pickaxes, spitting on their hands and immediately starting to mine. Standing below the train, Chen Meng watched this scene, silent for a while before sighing softly. At this rate, Doba won't be saying that goblins are the hardest working race for much longer. Then he shook his head and walked back into his train. Let them mine. After all, the train's living facilities were basically maxed out. The level 10 supermodel effects of bread slices and mineral water were long-term, slightly enhancing physical fitness. The level 5 supermodel effect of bread slices could also supplement vitamins, while the level 5 effect of mineral water was to clear kidney stones. There was also cola to replenish energy. With all these living facilities in place, at least the train residents wouldn't be worked to death. As the saying goes, before the troops move, the provisions must go first. The stellar train's provisions were fully stocked. Except, eating the same things every day could get boring. Sitting inside the train, Chen Meng looked at the forage ammo brought by Zhao Feng and waved his hand, signaling Zhao Ai to find the chef who claimed to be from a 5-star hotel and have him prepare some special dishes using the remaining vegetables and the 4 cured pork ribs from the last haul. The train has all the basic pots and pans. Ask him if he needs anything else. If he needed something like a spatula, Chen Meng could create it using the mechanical heart, consuming a bit of iron ore units. But if it was seasonings, salt, or pepper, the mechanical heart couldn't create those. Although the mechanical heart didn't have a clear creation range,